There are issues for all kids about anxiety and well-being, about, what this all means for the big questions that we all wonder. What does it all mean for us? Will life ever be the same again? For a child, and the difference that time makes in their experience in time, then it can be all-consuming. So we know that there's been increases of phones and calls to childline, for instance, with deep levels of anxiety. But there are also some kids who were in very vulnerable places before the outbreak. For the last 3 years, we've been compiling and shining a light on the scale and nature of vulnerability for children. There are over 2 million children who are living in fragile households where parents have their own problems, be they domestic abuse in the house, or whether it's severe mental health conditions or addictions to drug or alcohol. We know that a significant proportion of those kids aren't getting help and are largely invisible, or weren't getting help before the crisis. Now they're at home and locked down, they're even more invisible. We know that poverty in itself has a very negative impact on every aspect of life, and we know that there have been more and more families that have been applying for universal credit during the crisis. And then there are those children who may be carers for their own family. They may have particular needs or disabilities. They may be particularly disadvantaged in terms of their learning and at school. They are all now more vulnerable as a result of the coronavirus. So we've been working hard to shine a spotlight on those children. I was very pleased that schools were remaining open for those kids, vulnerable kids, because I thought it was important that they had a safe place to go, where there could be a structure to the day, and indeed where there could be oversight from other professionals. Really, a support for families and those kids as much as anything. I've seen teachers that are doing brilliant things in schools. They're, doing lots of kind of in-depth works with individual children, but also lots of fun activities and games and baking and gardening. This is something that a lot of families would really benefit from. So I want that to be a particular message to get to families and to kids. But I think the other area has been around the importance of public space, because of course if you go on social media you'll see there's lots of posts about families doing stuff with kids. It's been great weather, and if you've got a spacious house and you've got a big garden, then there's a lot of good things you can do in that space. If you're in a high rise or you're in cramped or temporary accommodation and you've got no outside space and it's 25 degrees outside, then it isn't fun. So it really emphasizes the importance of public space for kids and for families with kids. I was really concerned when parks started closing, because that's really important for kids. If you're an adult, you can go running or cycling, on pavements on the road. You can't do that if you're a child. So you really rely on that public space. And it's really important that, we talk about exercise for all of us and the importance of exercise. But, for kids, that's the importance of being able to play, and to be able to play with siblings and with families. And of course, not only the kind of physical benefits of that, yes, of course, but also, when you're playing, you've got that kind of release from that intensity of lockdown. You've got the ability to be able to, talk about, bring things up that are worrying you in a really informal way. We all know it's much easier to be able to talk about the big issues in life if you're on a walk, if you're playing a game, and if you're out and about with families in a much more kind of informal way. And of course, kids need to be able to play to make sense and process what's going on. We're all constantly trying to process what the big changes mean and what the worries are. So actually being able to play and do that is one really important way of doing it. But I want families to be able to get out into open space and kids to be able to do that in parks, yes, but also, you know, there is lots of green space that is behind closed doors, usually golf courses, you know, playing fields, especially of private schools. Well, I think we have to look creatively at what we have as an asset of a nation. And that means opening up those spaces, because, you know, what might be a bunker to avoid for a kind of 60-year-old golfer will be a, you know, a fantastic place for a child to be with a sandpit. So let's look at that creatively and look at how we can really make these places available to kids that need it.